Well, hello, Leonard. I hope you're all well. Now, Feeble Tory MP Anne-Marie Trevelyan was told, "You really ought to be ashamed of yourself." That was by Labour MP Lloyd Russell Moyle at a cross-party select committee meeting on international trade. Now, when a Labour MP says that, you could say, well, he would do, wouldn't he? You know, he's in the opposition, he's bound to. But when he's backed up by Conservative MP Mark Gardner, you have to say he has a point then, doesn't he? It's very, very interesting, but watch. Angus Brendan McNeil wonderfully exposed the whole nonsense of Brexit. Brilliant.
Scheduled to be longer. Lloyd Russell Moyle wants to come in a brief point. I'm going to come back at a final brief point, and then we're going to move on to Mick Whitley. Lloyd Russell Moyle, you said you wanted to come in.
I think it's fair to say relations between us, Minister, and your department. And I can't work out whether it's between you and us or your department and us have broken down very badly over the last few weeks. And I think it's fair to say that that your actions on the timing have not helped at this. I'm sure you will be able to point where we haven't done things perfectly either, but we need to rebuild trust because we can't continue like it is at the moment. And I hope that you and your officials are taking heed of that, because their behaviour and your behaviour has not been becoming to this place, and it has been really, really damaging to parliamentary scrutiny, and I think your department should be ashamed of itself for it and really be looking at that. However, what I want to ask specifically is whether we can get to a situation where we agree timetables. So you're saying, oh, well, I'll try and do it around that time. Why can't we hear you say, when I do my Section 42 report, I will give you 30 days to be able to respond to that. I will then make sure within those 30 days, I'm sitting days or whatever timetable you're laying out, I will then be for you. I will make sure that you then have another week to write your report. I will then make sure that we respond to your report. And your refusal to do that is the problem here, actually, because we're now in a situation on Australia, of course, as you know, where your reply to our report will probably come after CRAG has finished. That's no way to treat Parliament, is it? So why can't you, Secretary of State, let's reset the dial between us all. As I said, I'm sure there's fault on all sides. Reset the dial and give us timetables of when you won't do it before. I don't mind if you take a bit longer. No one minds that. But I will make sure that you have X number of days after the Section 42, because that's the time our scrutiny starts, is after the Section 42 report, not when the trade deal started. After the Section 42 report, how many days will we have?
It's quite damning, isn't it, what he says there? Didn't hold back, did he, Lloyd Russell Moyle?
Well, that's a very honest and a fair request. I was going to actually, maybe this is an appropriate time, Angus, to raise it, because you have continually said to me that you feel that there are poor relationships between your clerks and my parliamentary unit. Mm-hmm. I have done my best, as has the team, to try and get to the bottom of that, but it clearly feels like that isn't working as well as it needs to. So what I'd like to propose is that we meet out with a committee environment with my party unit and your clerks, and perhaps you and me, Angus, and we actually have a proper easy conversation so that we can try and understand genuinely where the issues are, because to your point, Russell, I think the challenge is not a lack of willingness. The reality is that the framework we have means that we have a number of government hurdles, cross-Whitehall issues that we always have to resolve before any stage, just like no doubt every other department, the ones I've been in, always been the same. It's never straightforward to have a single departmental view that doesn't require everyone else's input as well. And that is invariably what changes timetables. So honestly, it's going to be impossible to provide absolute precision at any point. I can only say we'll continue to provide the best endeavours, and I absolutely hear the challenge that you set us, and I think I would really like to get our teams together privately to have those conversations so that we can try and understand better where those gaps are.
I'm worried with the time. I think if we're going to do that, we have to have commitments. If we do that we've come out with time commitments out of that they're honoured. Because we've had a series of promises before that weren't honoured, and this is from the Speaker, to the House and to the Committee, that weren't honoured in the last one. Do you want to come in very briefly?
Just very, very briefly, Anne-Marie. I'm just wondering if that's your parliamentary team behind you.
It's a whole series of marvellous people, some of which belong to DIT and some of which don't.
I just wanted to come in on this point because, as you know, I chair the Committee on Arms Export Control, and as a result of which we deal with a number of other different departments, including the Foreign Office. The issue here is that your department is to be compared with other departments, and it comes out with nil points. It is specifically your department, and where I have clerks on my other committee, the comparable department is the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, which by the nature of it is a lot of travelling and a lot of kind of reacting to events. It is your department that is the problem. It's not Whitehall. It's a DIT problem. As you know, I worked in that department as a minister, and I have a huge amount of respect for the civil servants and Crawford Faulkner, by the way, who is an outstanding individual. But something has gone wrong, and we have to resolve this because it's looking very, very bad for what actually is one of the sort of the greatest departments, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of delivering Brexit opportunities.
Which is why I propose that we, meet offline and see if we can try to get to the bottom of what some of these issues are.
Okay.
So
I've got one final data question. So I asked when the Section 42 report will be triggered. We don't know. We don't know when CRAG will be triggered, and we don't know if we're going to have time between the Section 42 and CRAG. So three things we don't know. Do we know the GDP gain to the New Zealand FTA for the UK?
Sorry, say that again?
Do we know the gain in GDP from this agreement, the New Zealand Free Trade Agreement for the United Kingdom?
Oh, yes, excuse me, let me just my figures. So the assessment indicates that the UK economy increase is 0.8 billion.
Percentage of GDP?
That will be a small percentage because New Zealand is a relatively small country compared to ours.
0.01, 0.02?
I don't have that figure in front of me, but I can give it back to you in due course.
I mean,
Unless, Crawford, you have it to hand? No.
0.09. 0.09%.
The Australian one's only 0.07, so it can't be as high as that.
Well, 1.8 billion is, so the GDP of the UK is about 2 trillion. So working it out of my head, it's about 0.
As you know, Chad, one of the very important linchpins of doing the Australian and the New Zealand trade deals is our first two, not only because they're much like family in many ways as countries, but is because they're critically important parts of the CPTPP, and they are, they were keen to be able to advocate and work alongside us as we hope to exceed CPTPP. So these are important relationships, both bilaterally and, of course, in that plurilateral environment.
I mean, I think there's no updated GDP percentage have been given, but the earliest percentage the department published in the beginning was 0.01% of GDP gain, or a potential 0.01% of GDP loss. If it's about 0.01% of GDP gain, that means that when we compare to the damage of Brexit, which is about 5% of GDP, you're going to need about 500 New Zealand trade agreements to make up the damage. There's about 200 countries in the world, so it'll be interesting to see quite how that happens. Moving on, Mr. Mike Whitley.
Absolutely hilarious, isn't it? We're going to need about approximately 500 more deals like this to curtail the damage Brexit has done to this country. You really couldn't make it up, could you? And what Lloyd Russell Moyle said, it was absolutely damning, wasn't it? To say your department should be ashamed of themselves for their behaviour is quite strong, isn't it? Why am I not surprised? Right, I shall leave the video here, and until the next time I shall bid you farewell and take care.